My guest today is writer, director, and producer Matthew Hazandras, who specializes in narrative filmmaking. His directorial debut, The Two Gambits, highlights his aptitude for intricate and deep storylines, giving time to build the audience in a world worth remembering. The Two Gambits is a story of family, redemption, and consequences, and it's about how sometimes a dark fate can lead people astray and also back together again. Let's welcome a writer, director, producer, Matthew Hazandras, to the show. Welcome, Matthew.
Thank you, Ward. It's such a lovely introduction.
Well, you're very,
Happy
very
to be here.
welcome. Well, I enjoyed the film The Two Gambits, but I must ask, what led you into being a filmmaker?
We're going back quite far now. It's interesting. I never really knew what I wanted to do when I was going through school. It was a bit back and forth between a few different career journeys. In school, you get very caught up with, I'd say, the academic side of life. And growing up, I had a very passionate love for films. And I used to watch I don't know if you remember, it was way back now, 2 disc edition DVDs. And I would always watch the film and then I would watch the behind the scenes. And I was doing that through my childhood and through school. And there was a point where I realized that I just have to make this my profession one day because there's nothing else that interests me. There was a brief period where I was interested in art and then architecture, and they were all sort of in the same bubble of creativity, I guess. But nothing quite spoke to me like film. So I, when I decided that was it, then I just knew that's what I had to do. And it was a short while until I wrote my first script. That being just because you just sometimes just doesn't come to you, and one day it does, and then you just start and begin. And that happened to me last year. So it's been a it's been an interesting journey so far, but still very early on.
Did you go to film school?
I did, not for very long though. I briefly attended the National Film Television School here in the UK. That
Okay.
was a very eye-opening experience though. So it definitely taught me a lot.
Yeah, it's amazing how many, filmmakers take a different, each one takes a different journey. Some of them go through the
Mm.
whole educational route going to film school, and others they just pick up a camera and then they just go for it. But I
Yep.
think every road is the correct one because I've seen some incredible films out there, and one of those films happens to be your short film, The Two Gambits. Where did the idea for this film come from?
Well, interestingly enough, it sort of just it came from thin air, I guess. How a lot of ideas are bred. It it might have been from something I saw a few years ago. It was an idea. It did take a few years to transform into something that I was happy enough with to write the screenplay for. Because before I write screenplays, I sort of write, I just pull up pages on my laptop and I just write the story. And if I don't have a story, I don't start the script because then, you could just be writing and you get a bit lost along the way and you realize, I should have maybe written something else or just took a step back. So, yeah, I couldn't say it came from any one place, but I have always been drawn to slightly more realistic and darker films, more grounded stories, and characters who have a lot of issues that connect to their past. I'm very interested in that as a viewer. So that's essentially where I think I lie as a creator, and that's what this film. I think that's what this film displayed strongest.
Yeah, this film, there's so many parts to it, but they all fit together perfectly. I know when I saw the film, I wanted more when it was over. And to me, that is a good thing that when you see a short film and then it leaves you with, I want to know more. I want to know more about I want the stories, the characters, the backstory of the characters. But this film, The Two Gambits, I mean, it's really a twisted tale of a broken family, One is seeking a renewed relationship, but another one is actually seeking some sort of revenge, playing the blame game without actually knowing all the facts, which I thought was which was a great addition to the storyline.
Yeah, I think you've got it spot on there. There's always the person who doesn't listen to reason, and I think it's very much true to just life as we know it. The people who don't quite understand the full story, they sort of resent what they don't understand, and they're not usually open to listening until they feel, I guess, a sense of being ashamed about something, but because it was just the fuel of anger and rage, and he Isaac, he wasn't sure what to do with all of his emotions and his feelings about his family and his father, and his recent years just obviously um, haven't been the best in terms of you know uh, whether it was a life of crime he got into. We don't know, but you can just tell he made the wrong friends, and that just sort of led into everything. And it took being back in that house to realize that there was more to the solution than he might have realized.
Yeah, the opening scene when Sophie arrives at the house for the first time, and I
Yeah.
think it's like 18 years. Uh,
Mm.
One has to have a very keen eye as well as an eye for dialogue to pick up the little family secrets in this film, which I found very cool because you didn't make a whole lot of things very, very obvious. So there was this sense of mystery that I picked up in this film. How did you manage to keep the beginning of the story subtle without giving it all away too soon?
Um, I think the simple answer to that would be I did it on purpose, I guess. I saw this film as a way to give the viewer clues, but not give them everything, and in a way show them more than I'm telling them. And they, through the story, obviously realize more than the characters do. And just watching from the outside perspective, sort of like, oh, I wish Walter would just realize that that was his daughter, but also wondering, does he realize that that's his daughter? And you sort of don't know really where all of their heads are. I mean, we don't even know where Isaac went at the very end of the movie. Now I'm talking about the final scene. Um, but everything it starts as a mystery and it sort of ends as a mystery. We don't really know what is going to happen when she walks back into the house. If he's going to say, "By the way, I know who you are," or if it's just going to keep going on, and she's going to get her own answers and eventually tell him or leave. We have no idea. So I'd like to say the whole thing is has that mystery element all the way through, and it doesn't really, at least for me as the person who creates it, it doesn't really go away. I hope it doesn't for other people as well.
Yeah, it doesn't, and because I know that in that opening scene, you give this very, very subtle hint as to who Sophie is. And the father doesn't recognize her right off, but it's
Mm,
almost like he knows there's something different because she's coming in basically replacing, is it another therapist, a therapist, or is it a social worker of some sort? But he's picking something up, but he can't put his finger on it. And here she is for the first time actually looking at her father after all of these years. And in the way that she played it so calmly and not to let on, because I thought it was a genius way of getting inside the house for one thing.
mm. Yeah, I think her other option would have been Isaac's option, and that wouldn't have ended well for either of them. But yeah, I just saw it as a way to bring I saw it as a way to just bring her in the calmest way possible, and sort of give that parallel between well, that opposite between her and Isaac. She's coming peacefully, he's not. Um, and interestingly enough, when I first wrote the script, she wasn't even his daughter. She was just a therapist. And the whole point was Isaac was this antagonist who just appeared and she found out his plan. And she was then questioning, should I stop it or is it actually going to help my client? Is it going to maybe help reveal things himself, see things about his life that maybe is going to help him, come into the next session with me better, because he had a lot more in that first version of the story. He had a lot more. He was a lot more caught up about his son, and in this version, he doesn't really speak about him too much. It's just, I think it's all almost very brief. So yeah, it transformed over time, and in the end, it was just the daughter, and I felt that was right. And then that's when the title, funny enough, changed from the old man in the house to the two gambits, and it became about siblings.
Yeah, see, and I like the contrast that you set up between the brother and the sister, because there's this tug of war between them. And she wants to forgive, but he doesn't. He literally wants revenge. He's like, my father ruined my life, but he was the one that grew up in that house. She didn't. And
Yeah,
she's wanting to forget, because she's wanting to come back and be family again. Because you allude to exactly what happened in this film as to why she didn't grow up into that house, and that is that's really a very tense yet heartbreaking scene that you created there,
mm,
and which is interesting because the sister, would be was it's funny how you did it, because normally the sister would be the one that would be unforgiving, and then the
yeah,
brother would be the one where he wouldn't have never been mad at his father, but you switched roles, which
mm,
creates this conflict and this tension in the family.
yeah. No, you're spot on there. I guess it was her distance and her emotional disconnection that allowed her to come in more maturely and with a fresh set of ears, and his let's say closer attachment, especially to his mother, is what kept him too close to the story of the house, and that's why he felt that it was all up to him now to bring some form of justice and get the answer that he wanted, even though he didn't know what that was. He just wanted to see his parent essentially at his feet, so he could finally feel like someone was sorry for what happened in his life, even though nothing was done to him. It was always just life taking its course.
Yeah, it was almost like the brother. Um, it's almost like the brother didn't fully understand what went on with his sister, because it was almost like it was never truly explained to him. It was more like, this happened, go on with your life. But he really just never let that go. And
Yeah,
especially when he was a child, because he's going to be thinking the whole time, why isn't she not coming back? And the parents never explaining that. And then, of course, the situation with the mother. So,
mm,
and then that added a whole nother very, very tense element, because then the brother starts blaming the father.
yeah, no, completely. I guess you could say there's no one left to blame, and he didn't really grow up with he didn't grow up with as much maybe nurturing and education as he should have. So he's a bit of a hothead. He just didn't really know where to look. And to be honest, it would have just been the mirror, and you could have said, okay, calm down. This is not about you. Some bad stuff happened, but you can be an adult about it and go and see your only parent and try and reconnect with your sister. But instead, it's a plot to cause chaos.
Well, you did a brilliant job when it came to the flashbacks, or the flashbacks of the memory of the family being together. Everything is happy. Um, the cinematography, the colorization of that scene alone, because like the initial opening scene, there's this still, cold darkness to it because you're
Mm.
setting, because it's a very mysterious meeting at the very onset of the film. But then you have these flashbacks where they're joyous, they're happy, they're bright, they're colorful. So the contrast worked by building this story and just into a complete film.
Yeah, yeah. I'd have to credit our director of photography, Thomas. And I remember there was a moment on set. I think I know exactly what scene you're talking about. It's where they're playing football in the garden, and there were a few of us around the monitor, and we saw we. Funny enough, the sunlight was actually it was real for the most part, but we had a big light on the side out of frame that was just giving it that extra golden look. And there was a moment where we were just like, "Oh wow, that's a pretty shot." And in my head, I just said, "Okay, this is good because now I feel that contrast visually between what we've just shot in the other room compared to now the flashback." Because when it came to the grade, we didn't really change the colors too much. It was just the way we decided to light everything on set. But that was all our cinematographer's idea. So I give a full credit to Thomas there.
Yeah, because you start this film off in this very like I said, it's a cool, it's a gray, it's moody, it lacks life. It's kind of like what you would expect from an empty house or a house in which was full of life at one time, but now only one person lives there. And, lights aren't turned on a regular basis unless you actually need one, which made that whole scene of the flashback that, I mean, because that shot is a very beautiful shot, but it adds so much to this film because in that one scene, you're actually looking at this is when the family was was happy,
Yeah.
and but let me ask you this about the casting because what was the casting process like? Because you've got an amazing cast here.
It was. It took a while. I'll be honest. We had a scheduling issue, so we had to delay the shoot. I think it was about 2 months. So we had a few people change along the way as well. I can tell you the people that never changed. It was it well actually Walter, Isaac, our burglars, and yeah, no, those were the actors that never changed. We did change the actor for Ava, and we did change Claire. And I think the changes just they worked perfectly. When we did the run throughs, we did the auditions, everything sort of clicked. Claire gave off that awkwardness that I was really looking for in the character, as you would be when you're having to sit there and lie, and you're essentially in between two people, one person who wants to hurt the other and the other who doesn't know it's coming. Um, and she wasn't really prepared for this because she just wants to find out some answers and help her brother and come to terms with her own story in a more respectful way. Um, but yeah, the casting I'd say it went fairly smoothly. I it's actually one of the things that goes smoothly for me in a lot of cases. I've already casted my next two shorts, and it didn't take too long. So yeah, I was happy with it.
How did you come across actor Herbert Forthuber? Which when I first saw him, I went, He looks very familiar. So I had to look him up. Of course,
Hmm.
he was in Quantum of Solace and Outlander. How did he become a part of your film?
Herbert, funny enough, I found him through Backstage, and we just hit it off. I think quite early on. He loved the script, and for me, that's the first thing I look for in an actor. It's someone who loves it. If an actor comes back and says, yeah, I'm happy to play the part. I don't feel that they're too enthused about it. But I got this very long email from Herbert about how badly he wants to play this part and how this was a dream role of his. And as soon as I got him on a Zoom call, I could just tell that he was going to be so easy to work with, and he was such a lovely person, always joking, which I think had just helped the vibe on set because he is essentially the center of attention, and he doesn't take himself too seriously yet, playing such a serious character. So it's not what you'd expect, but yeah, he was just like a ball of light that came to set.
That's really cool because I've talked to so many actors, and you have this instant thought or persona as who they're really going to be like, but then they come on and you start talking to them, and they're the complete opposite.
Yeah.
you know, and because he plays that role, he plays it very, very seriously. Um, and I can see why he wanted to do that role because that really brings out someone's acting in this type of role because it's
Yeah.
mysterious. Um, he's also thinking about the people he's meeting in each of the scenes. Of course, there's the one scene where it gets kind of physical.
Mhm.
So there was a lot of ways to play that particular role. Now, when I watched this film, I was really drawn in by actress Vyosa Azemi. How did you meet her?
So Vyosa came through the same route as Herbert. I she was the, I guess you could say, more last minute cast of production. We were about, I'd say, 3 weeks, 4 weeks out from filming, so it wasn't too bad. I know some people have to replace actors in a day or two, and that I just can only imagine how stressful that is. But she came on, and I said, "Look, there's a lot of lines to learn. This is probably the most dialogue-heavy short film you're going to come across." Um, and yeah, I just want to see if you're interested in the character. Here's the script. Let me know what you think. And she came back with very similar energy to Herbert. And as soon as I got them on a call together, because I think that was one of the most important points of chemistry, they just started speaking German, and I had no idea that they were both German together, and all of a sudden I was like, oh, lovely. There's already that built-in chemistry there between their own country, and they just got on so well through. We did read-throughs, we did just a lot of here and there friendly meetings. Everything was virtual because Herbert was in Germany till we started shooting, but yeah, she came about the same way as him, and I'd say the anomaly was the actor who played Isaac. He was my friend who I met working about 3 years prior to that. So um, yeah, everyone else was through. I put out some ads on social media too for some good actors. They came through. Everything else was backstage.
Yeah, the whole cast was perfect, especially the three main characters. I mean, it. I don't. You could have picked better actors for this because not only was it their acting, they had the right look.
Mm.
And I love Viosa's. Her own look really stood out. I mean, because you can't miss her at all. So when you have that dark, cool opening scene, she radiates in that scene just by her look. Um, but both of them, like you said, they play very well off one another. But I have to say the cinematography of this film was top notch. I mean, I had to go back and look at some of the scenes because the colorization, and like you had said, you rarely had to do any, I guess, corrections on the areas of the colorization because each scene was perfect in my mind. Because you really know how to use that slight nuance of color based on the action in the scene, which then adds to the emotion of the story. So, kudos and much praise to your cinematographer.
Yeah, yeah, that would be Thomas. We went back and forth quite a few times, and we had, I guess you could say, to start with very different ideas on how we were gonna, differentiate, separate the flashback scenes from present day, and how we were gonna light certain shots, and in the end, even for the final sequence in the house where they all end up in a bit of a fight. Um, he came up with the idea to light everything with torches, and I had the idea to have them turn the lights on as soon as they came in. And I'm happy we went with his decision. And I had this idea to, bring this really heavy sort of golden hue into post production for the flashback scenes. And he said, no, let's just light it differently on set. And I think all of his more practical decisions in the moment just really helped the film go in a better direction, especially when you're writing it too. It's sometimes tricky to detach yourself, and that's where feedback from people who also care about the project is extremely valuable. And that's something I just feel I'm learning as a filmmaker, project by project.
It's amazing the different thoughts with cinematographers because here you're working with someone who wants to get the look on film where you're not spending a whole lot of time or even money for that matter in post production when it comes to coloring. And lighting is not the easiest thing in the world when
Definitely
it
not.
when it
No.
comes to any scene. But of course, then you have those that can look at it and know exactly what they're going to be or what's going to be done in post production. And but to do it on set, there's just an art to that. But with the two gambits, is this going to lead up to a possible full feature to carry on the story?
You know what? I've put such little thought into it because by the way, you're not the first person who said this to me. And even some of our actors said, let's do another short film, let's do a part two. And I've just been so fixated on my next few shorts because I've written all of them and I'm so eager to get them into production. I'm running with that first, and maybe one day as a passion project, I might revisit this when everyone's a bit older. I think that could be more interesting. And at any point in my career, I'd love still to do short films because I think just personally, I think they're only going to be higher in demand the way that content is going. So maybe in 10 years' time, I might revisit it with a part two. But we'll see. Yeah, it could be the burglar who comes knocking again. We never know.
Yeah, you bring something up that I actually got into a conversation with someone. It's probably been a couple of weeks. And, we all know that content is extremely important today. And not just in film, but some people I talk to, they feel that short films don't get the recognition they deserve. And that's in many cases that's true. But I also believe like you, content today is changing and the short film could end up being the new feature film that people want to see. Because I've seen short films, I mean, they could be 15 minutes long, and you swear with the way that it was filmed, the storyline, and the acting, that you watched a full feature.
Mhm.
There was it was the platform that they never got off the ground, Quibi. And the plan for Quibi was where they wanted to create television sitcoms that were only 10 minutes long. Well, to me, why would you want to do a sitcom when you could just do a short film and still get the same end result? So I agree with you. I think the short film industry is going to explode probably in less than 3 years.
Yeah, I'm completely on board with that. I think as well as people move as they have been doing over the last decade now more towards streaming. If you think about it, the only reason short films aren't maybe at the cinema is because people would say, well, why am I going all the way there, taking half an hour out of my day to go and watch a 15-minute movie and then coming all the way back and, spending whether it was £2 or £20 on the ticket. People would just rather sit in the comfort of their own home to watch a short film. And I guess that makes it easier for people to just make more because you had even Netflix this year who were they were showing some of the Oscar shortlisted or Oscar nominated short films, and I've never seen that before. And it just seems like these major streaming platforms are starting to pick up a little bit. You've got Disney, Sony, who are already doing their own original short films. I think Wes Anderson was the one who won the Oscar for
Yeah,
Best Short.
Wes Anderson won,
Yeah,
didn't show up, and yeah,
yeah,
I would have
I
chosen
remember
his
that.
out of the five, but
Mm.
but yeah, you're right because I've seen Disney, Sony. I saw Apple. Apple made one this year. That's in the circuit. It just looks like a 15-minute iPhone commercial, even though it's extremely well done. I have to hand it to that. Great
Yeah,
story. The look, everything is great, but it still comes across as an advertisement. Uh, but like these, and what's funny is that these studios act like half of them act like the short film is not important, but they
I know.
spend far more money in producing a short film just to try to win the Oscar. And I just wish it was a category that studios were not allowed to compete in. It should be independent filmmakers only. Uh, but I will say this, the independent filmmaker can produce films far better and cheaper than these studios. So it's still equal playing ground in some areas, but you and I both know the short film industry is about to explode because I think there's going to be a place for it. And like you said, Netflix was showing some of the Oscar shortlisted and nominated films, especially their own, because they were the ones that produced The After that was
Mm.
nominated. And but like you said, streaming content, people don't want to sit there forever. So if you're going to produce a 10-minute, 15 minutes, 20-minute short film, then you're going to be able to get their attention. So, yeah, I think a lot more money is about to be poured into the short film industry.
Yeah, I hope so too. I think it's going to just make everything more accessible for up and coming filmmakers. Because when you go to funding companies as a short film producer and you say, "Hey, here's my film," you know, can we speak about it? And you use the word short in front of that, it's an immediate turn off. They don't want to speak to you. And I think that, as you said, is all going to change going forward when there is potential for them to make money as well,
You
which
know,
I think is going to be a part of the future.
it's kind of weird because no pun intended, but they're short-sighted because if so much content out there, you know this, I know this. If you go on, if you go on like YouTube, I think the average viewer on YouTube probably stays less than 90 seconds. And I've
Yeah,
got a channel where we actually average 11 minutes per viewer. Some of them watch everything all the way through. We may have 5-minute content, and then we may have 2 hour content. You know, and I think the studios, or I should say, uh, the funding firms out there for film, they're missing this huge category, this huge business model of short films, and they could be making a ton of money. But at the same time, like you said, who is going to go to the theater to spend money to go watch a 15-minute short film? But my ideal has always been, why can't the major theater chains across the world start placing in a short film before the feature, instead of just running all of these advertisements over and over again that we already see on television? But why not show a short film? So let's say you go to the theater and you're going to go watch like Mission Impossible. Why not have a short film that is shown before Mission Impossible, but it's an action short film? So that way you put genre to genre. So that, because that's what
Mm.
people were there for. You don't want to put some rom-com love story before Mission Impossible, but to me, that starts training the audience of what a short film is. And when they start seeing content like that online, it just becomes part of the mainstream, but it also builds a whole new industry.
I think I've never actually heard of that idea before, and I think it's a lovely idea to do that. I see a lot of people flooding into cinemas, um, 5, even 2 minutes before the actual movie starts, because they're like, the commercials, they're 20, 30 minutes long. Let's just get there later. And I do the same sometimes, to be honest. I think, I don't want to sit through all of that again. And I think it would just be a question of, battling for slots, and who's paying for that time on the cinema screen, or if the industry just decides to give it an opportunity. Um, and like you, I really hope that it does come to fruition, because I think it's going to be very important. And
Yeah.
everyone's attention span is lowering today. That's a fact. So I think short films are just a way to capitalize on it.
Yeah, and it's another part of the industry in which the major studios can actually capitalize on. And plus, it opens up more opportunities for actors, because sometimes, and you know this, we can watch a short film that leaves a lasting impression upon us, where the feature film, we forget about it the next day.
Yeah.
So there's power in the short film. And I think, I hope others are thinking like you and I, that this
Me
industry is
too.
about to explode. And I'm surprised it's not there right now, because I know with Quibi, that was in a way part of their plan of creating really short content, and they had a $2 billion investment. And when they launched it, everybody was just like, we don't understand what this is. So I think their idea is great. Their execution was wrong.
Yeah.
Because that was
No, I
Katzenberg.
agree.
Yeah, that
I
was
agree.
Katzenberg's doing. But I hope they don't actually give up on it. I think they just need to rethink certain areas, because I think they didn't read I don't think they read the audience correctly on it. Because
I think no, I'm there with you. I think for something to work, it has to be tested for long enough, and I think there has to be that trial and error phase. If they put out a streaming site with strictly short films in the style of Netflix, and people don't bite on it, then you have to change it up, and find what works for people, what people want to see. Maybe even uh, something vertical that people can watch on their phones, and horizontal for television screens. I think just appealing to as many people as possible, because they're gonna find it alien at first. But whether that comes from the big studios or the independent filmmakers, I personally would love to see a lot of indie film producers get together and get the money together for something like that and compete with the studios and show them in a way how it's done. Um, and that they're sort of, a bit ahead of the curve. But I guess it will just take its natural toll at this point. And like you, I do think shorts are going to be rivaling features at some point.
Well, you bring up a format change too, because I'm starting, and this is very, very small, but I'm starting to see some people doing
Yeah.
vertical films, which is basically made to be shown on our iPhone, and that takes a lot of ingenuity to pull that off, because your camera shots are not going to be the same.
Yes. Yeah.
So we're gonna start seeing content, I think, just blossom and expand within the next just a couple of years. And then it's really going to start becoming the norm. We just need someone to take the step of faith to put it out there and let people, start getting used to it, because then the more that it starts becoming common, then we won't think anything about it, and then more people will start watching. So there's a lot of not only the formats, but then film. And the thing I love about film will never end.
Yeah.
Now, for you,
You're
where
right.
can everyone see the Two Gambits?
So everyone can watch it on YouTube. It's there. I initially had plans to put it on Apple and Amazon, and I scrapped everything because I wanted it to be easy for people to watch. They don't need to make an account or anything. Just hit on the link. They can find it on YouTube, on Google, wherever.
Yeah, and what do you have planned for the rest of the year?
So I'd love to get one more short done by the end of this year. And I have two planned for next year. But as things are in this field, nothing really goes to plan. So it could be a complete rejig of the order. But yeah, I'd like to say at least one more.
Oh, fantastic! Well, when you get the next one done, you got to come back. I want to watch it, and we can
Oh,
talk about it.
definitely. Yeah, definitely. It's very, very welcoming here. And I just wanted to say I think it's amazing what you're doing, because not a lot of people do it. And you're shining a light on short films. I think you, in a way, you're setting an example for what should be the case, because just as much work and creativity goes into these projects from not only from myself, but I have a network of a lot of other filmmakers, and I know how sometimes a short film takes 6 years to to come to fruition, and I think that deserves to be noticed and awarded at the same level as feature films. So yeah, I mean, what you do and how well you are able to break down such short stories, I think it's pretty amazing.
Well, I appreciate that, Matthew, and I am a huge lover of short films. There's just so many. I mean, a lot of people don't realize that there are over at least 10,000 short films created per year. And for those that are trying to go through the whole film festival circuit, it gets really tough. I know with
Yeah.
Tribeca Film Festival this year, they had over 8,000 submissions.
Wow.
2,000 were chosen. And then with Holly Shorts, there was over 6,000 submissions and only 400 were chosen. And of course, those are Oscar qualifying film festivals. So there's so much creativity out there. And ladies and gentlemen, if you are a filmmaker, keep working hard. Put your vision, your ideas out there. I want to see what you're doing. And just like Matthew alluded to, some of you, I know, I've talked to you. You've worked 6, 7 years to get your film made. I want to see it and I want to talk about it. And that's what this whole platform is about. And again, Matthew, I enjoyed having you come on today to talk about the Two Gambits. And ladies and gentlemen, this is a film, and like Matthew said, It's available on YouTube right now. Just look up The Two Gambits. You have got to see this film. Amazing storytelling, amazing and stellar acting from a great cast, and the cinematography is off the chart. So if you are a cinematographer, or maybe you're looking for one, watch this film and you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But of course, it all happens because of the great direction from Matthew Hazandras. And Matthew, again, thank you for coming on.
No, well, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, again, you can catch The Two Gambits on YouTube. Just look it up. And for all of you watching and listening, I want to thank you. And as for me, I'll either see you at the movies or from the red carpet.